What I want to do right now is a book review on the 50th Law by 50 Cent, quote unquote 50 Cent, and Robert Greene, or Robert Greene, quote unquote, and 50 Cent. Now, just to start it off, I give the book a 7.5 out of 10. It's it's pretty good, but it's not for everybody. I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, and it was kind of a chore to read. But overall, the book is pretty good. The book talks about fear and the different elements of fear and how fear really holds you back instead of helping you or being any kind of protective agent. It's broken down into 10 chapters, which talk about like fear of death, fear of confrontation, fear of consequence, fear of taking a risk, different fears like that. And I really didn't like the structure of the book. I feel like the book was really too long. It's about 280 pages. I feel like they could have got what they got done in about half. I don't think the book should have been more than 170 pages, if not a little bit less than that. Because the way they wrote it, you could tell 50 Cent didn't really have much to do with this book. And I feel like the marketing was very misleading in that element. It's basically a Robert Greene book with some examples of 50's life sprinkled in. But the thing is, 50's story is not, there's not enough elements of 50's story included in this book for it to be that long. Basically, how they structure this, every chapter, at the beginning of the chapter, there's 2 paragraphs of 50's story, sometimes overlapping each other. Like, they'll talk, like, I could have sworn that for 3 straight chapters, they talked about the day 50 got shot. 50 got in the backseat of the car. 50 got shot. I saw it on VH1. I saw it in the 50 Cent movie. And I read about it 3 times in this book. Like, I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm sorry. But I just don't think that 50's, life story is that thorough to write a whole book on. And basically, I think that Robert Greene and 50 really didn't have any interaction because all Robert Greene examples that he used were things that we've already heard about 50. And there's no new antidotes from 50's life. Maybe a couple little hustler stories here and there, but who knows how real those are. There's no mentions of 50's current life. There's no, the word vitamin water is not even in the entire book. The names Tony Yayo and Lloyd Banks are not in the entire book. There's a lot of things that 50's doing right now. G-Unit Records, it doesn't really talk about that. It doesn't talk about anything 50's got going on right now in the entire book. So it's like everything that you saw in the 50 Cent movie and in the 50 Cent documentary on VH1, all that stuff is repeated in the book a bunch of times and not even repeated in any detail. And then after you go through the little parts with 50 in every chapter, that's how it starts. Then it talks about the actual fear and how it controls you primarily and how you shouldn't give in to the fear. I like those parts. Those parts are very informative. They're very reflective. They make you think a lot. I really enjoy that. But then it uses an example of another person in time. And this is when I didn't like it because a lot of those parts were really dry and hard to get through. And a lot of those examples were seemingly random. And it seems like you could use anybody as an example of not to be fearless, right? Like some of the names they used were Amelia Earhart, Frederick Douglass, multiple Greek philosophers, Napoleon, and a host of other people. Now, I did like the Napoleon part. I liked the Frederick Douglass parts, but I couldn't get through the Greek philosophers and the Roman philosophers. I felt like it was a chore. It was a chore to read those parts. And then right after those parts, this is how every single chapter is structured, by the way. It gives you like 4 examples of how to implement it. And those parts are very dry. I felt like Robert Greene at that point was just checking a checklist to get the volume of the book up. But other than that, I give the book a 7.5 out of 10. If you're a fan of 50 Cent, I would say stay away from this book because you probably already have heard everything that this book is really going to tell you about 50. But if you're a fan of Robert Greene or leadership strategies or just any kind of book like that in general, I would say definitely pick up the book. It's not going to be the quickest read in the world. Like I said, it's a little bit dry. But all in all, if you like the 48 Laws of Power and books like that, I think you'll enjoy the 50th Law as well. And I definitely would recommend that you check it out if those are the type of books you like.